Good morning, my fellow basketball fans and bettors. Last night sure was a fun night for the Suns bettors. I hope you got on it. I was leaning that way. Ultimately, I did get on it late there. We're going to start with the early game, the Nets and the Bucks. They travel to Milwaukee. Bucks are down 0-2 now for their first game at home. This really is a must-win game for them. And so let's look at them. They've really been struggling these first two games here against Brooklyn. I mean, they got blown out in game two there. First thing that stands out to me, and this is a season-long trend, but the Bucks team is not good against winning teams. They're during this regular season, they're only 19-17 straight up versus winning teams. So, they struggle against competitive teams, right? They're 12-15 after a loss. That's not something you want to back, and now they're lost two straight. 19-23 with equal rest. They're 6-6 with 2 to 3 days rest. And they're 10-10 as a home favorite since April 22nd. Mind you, 3 of those wins was against the Heat in the first round at home. So they were 7-10 at home to finish the regular season and brought that back to 50% with those 3 wins over the Heat in the first round. And the Heat, was not a good team this year, right? If you watch Coach Budenholzer's interview after the game the other day, I don't know if you can find anything to back in this team. I mean, the look on his face looked like defeat. I mean, they got blown out, sure, but to me, I saw a guy that really had no idea what to do. He was asked questions about the high pick and roll the Nets are running with KD and Irving, and he's just described how they're struggling to disrupt it. They're exploiting their opportunities and they're just playing at a higher level. Quite simply, the turnovers that the Bucks, were experiencing in Game 2, he credited to the Nets defense. Which, if you've been watching the Nets all season, they haven't really been playing any defense, and that's been one criticism of them. If they played just a little bit of defense, they could be unstoppable. They may have decided to do that now in the postseason when it actually matters. And now we're seeing those results. Sometimes it's tough to know where you're going if you don't know where you came from. These trends are shit. There's nothing that makes you want to back this team, lay points at home versus a Nets team right now. So I looked at these same trends from last year. All of them are worse, with the exception of one. So their ATS record after a loss is worse than last year. Their equal rest record is worse than last year. Their winning record versus winning teams is worse than last year. The only one that's improved, and it's only improved to 50-50, was their trend with 2 to 3 days off. It brought it up to 6-6. Congratulations, guys. Do you even really need to look at the net side? It's almost like an auto bet, right? But we're still going to look. Now, we'll just kind of stick with that same theory. Where do the Nets come from to where they're at now? Well, they were crap last year, so all these trends are going to be better, improved over last year. So right there, you have two teams going the opposite direction, one going up and one going down. But still, the Nets are 6-7 as road dogs this year, and they're 37-16 after a win. They're 20-20 with equal rest, and 8-7 with 2 to 3 days rest. They did lose Game 3 versus the Celtics when they went to Boston, but they were laying 7.5 on the road. Now they're getting 3.5. Guys, it's the Nets here. It's the Nets are pass, and I'm riding the Nets in every game. I think a sweep is very possible against this Bucks team. I grabbed a 3.5 2 days ago. Nets, let's roll. Brooklyn together. Now for the left coast game, the Clippers and the Jazz. Man, what a tough loss the other day for us. We were on the Jazz minus 3.5. We did lose by the hook. That is really rare to lose by that. That may be the first time I've lost by the hook all season. So we move on. Now, I broke this game down similar to the Nets and the Bucks, looking at trends this year versus trends last year. Same sort of thing, guys. We got two teams going the opposite directions. I think you already know. The Jazz are going up and the Clippers are going down. Let's talk about the Clippers. But today, I'm not so sure is the day I can get behind the Clippers. There's a lot of things going against them, guys. I think game one, even though a lot of trends pointed against them getting game one was their spot. Even though I was on the Jazz, that was their spot after watching that game. They had it and they lost it. Mitchell wasn't 100%. He was feeling lightheaded. There's so many things went wrong for the Jazz to start that game, and it really hurt the chances of our cover. But today is a different day, and that still the Jazz have incredible ATS trends that we like, and we'll continue to back if the numbers support it. They're 25-13 as a home favorite. This is a regular season trend. They're 35-21 after a win, 27-20 with equal rest, 29-20 with 1 day rest. And again, all of these trends were improved significantly over last year. I do want to point out in the game one, their field goal percentage and 3-point percentage was below average, roughly about 5 points. Which is, again, they started off ice cold, right? Missed 20 straight shots, so it's gonna drag their shooting percentages down a little bit. So keep that in mind. They just barely missed the cover. They pushed on the closing line with slightly depressed shooting percentages. And looking at the Clip side, they're 16-12 after a loss. They're 24-20 with equal rest, 26-24 with 1 day rest. But they're 0-5-1 as a dog since February 2nd of this year. Their field goal percentage was slightly under in the game one, slightly under average in game one, and their 3-point percentage was on par. Again, I compared these trends to last year. The Clippers' ATS trend after a loss is worse than last year. Their record with 1 day rest is worse than last year. I'm looking to see teams that have made improvements and strides over their past. I'm not seeing it with this Clippers team. They're in worse form. And if you're looking at their starting lineup, check out their starting lineup this year versus starting lineup last year. You know what you're betting on? You're betting on Batum and Reggie Jackson. That's it. That's the difference between this year and last year. They have Batum and Reggie Jackson in their starting lineup. If that's good enough, if that does it for you to back the Clippers, be my guest. Doesn't do it for me. After all that, there's some incredible SDQL trends that you really got to check out. At Barry Bolo, at Barry_Bolo. You really got to check him out. It points to the Jazz. It just supports our look even more. Conley is still listed questionable for tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him. Either way, with him or out, I still like the Jazz. It may be worth considering trifecta spot if you're into that. The Hook official plays for June 10th. We got the Nets plus 3.5. That's at BetMGM. And I have the Jazz -3. Got that at DraftKings. There's games forever, guys. Stay sharp. Don't force plays. Let's crush these books.